Will Justin Flowe truly challenge Isaac Slade Matuatia at will linebacker spot? Um, and Eric, you caught something that completely flew over my head, and now it's made a ton of sense ever since. When Isaac Slade Matuatia said that people don't really realize how much the younger linebackers are pushing the veteran guys in this group.
Yeah, no, he said that last week, or no, 2 weeks ago, but right before the spring game. And I think I thought, okay, interesting. I think he's just trying to be complimentary of the young guys. But then you watch Justin Flowe out there for the spring game, and you come away going like, like I think Isaac Slade might have his hand full, And again, I don't want to read too much from it, and I think I still expect. I had the two deep up on the site, the predicted two deep a couple of days ago, and I still have Isaac Slade Matuatia with the first team, but I think Justin Flowe is going to make this more of a competition than we thought, and that's significant. Isaac Slade Matuatia is a 2-year starter. He was co-leader in tackles last year with Noah Sewell. This is a very, a developed player. This is a leader on defense, and to have that job, just kind of like what we were talking about with Devin Williams, maybe challenging a Jalen Redd or a Johnny Johnson. The young players on this team are developing at a rate and are that caliber when they're arriving that they really do challenge the veteran guys. And maybe a couple of starters lose their jobs, and maybe it's a guy like a Jalen Redd or a Johnny Johnson at receiver loses out to a Devin Williams at receiver, and maybe it's a guy like Isaac Slade Matuatia eventually losing out to a Justin Flowe. I'm not predicting that's going to happen immediately, but I also think you just have to be honest, and Justin Flowe is a really, really talented dude, and he, in theory, because of eligibility, could leave after the 2022 season. And I think you would hate it if you had one season of him really having a big impact. I think you want to maximize that time. And of course, he has to prove it. But boy, the early returns from one spring game, that guy can play.
I'm starting to come around to this idea that it might be a case of where we're repeating ourselves from last year at the receiver spot to what we're now going to say with Flowe, and that part of me is starting to open up to the idea that Isaac Slade Matuatia opens the year as the team's starting linebacker, but maybe doesn't finish the year as the team's starting inside linebacker, because Flowe, from a physical standpoint, if you checked off you listed out all the attributes you needed at inside linebacker, and then you compared Flowe and Isaac Slade Matuatia, Flowe probably gets every single one. From size, speed, strength, athleticism, everything from a physical standpoint, Flowe probably gets that box. And where Isaac right now, from our perspective at least, is ahead of the curve is everything that is a teachable thing, a learnable thing, understanding the playbook, diagnosing plays, being the leader, being a guy that can get your team locked in position, and your alignments are all correctly, and fundamentally tackling and skills of that nature of your position, like things that you can learn. That's where Isaac's above Flowe right now. And it's going to come down to, I guess, how wide of a gap is that, and how quickly can Flowe close the gap in terms of understanding coverages, diagnosing the offensive sets, and being that inside guy that helps lock in every position and whatnot. Those are the skills and the attributes that Flowe's going to have to make up, and that basically comes through reps, comes through experience. Yeah. And as he gets more and more of that, the gap is going to shrink. So I'm not there yet to say it's going to happen, but I think Isaac starts the year, and there's a scenario that I see where he doesn't finish the year as a starter, which to me is mind blowing, because I'm a huge Isaac Slade Matuatia fan. I think he's really good, NFL good.
I think we're going to see really quickly kind of what the thought process is of this position. Like if game 1 and 2, we see a lot of Justin Flowe, and even if Slade Matuatia is starting, I think that's, to me, would indicate that they want him to have a big role on this defense.
They share it.
Yeah, like they're kind of sharing it early. And like you said, the thing that distances or distinguishes the two from each other is really just game reps at this point, because I need to do a good job running through it. Like physically, I don't think it's really much of a question. I mean, I think pretty much the casual fan can look at the two standing next to each other and be like, that guy looks more impressive. And then you go watch a minute and a half of highlights, and you probably are like, that guy looks more impressive too. So but the part of it that gets lost on the average fan, and that we have to also, the two of us, remember, is that it was a spring game, and
Right.
a lot of linebacker is not just the physical stuff. A ton of it's mental. It's getting set up in the right spot. It's making calls, because that's the position where you're making the calls, is those two inside linebacker spots. It's doing that. It's also just reading and reacting to what's happening on the field, and being studied enough with what the other team is doing. So if those areas continue to lag behind, then Justin Flowe probably shouldn't be playing over Isaac Slade-Matautia, regardless of how physically gifted. But if the other parts even out, and I think that only happens over snaps, and so maybe we get 4 to 5 games into the season, and it's like, okay, Flowe is starting to figure it out and get the snaps. I don't doubt at all that between Ken Wilson and Tim DeRuyter and the rest of that staff, they're going to be having some tough conversations about, like, boy, ISM's a team leader. Everybody respects this guy, but is it not time that we at least give Flowe, the majority of the reps? And that's tough for Isaac Slade-Matautia, because I think he's got an NFL upside, but this is what happens when you recruit at this level. And I can't guarantee it, but I'm not going to go into 21 expecting that Flowe has no chance of starting games this season. In fact, I probably would expect that by the end of the season, he's at least out there a little bit.
Is there a possibility that is Sewell the best linebacker they have, or is Isaac above Sewell? Like, why are we? What's to say Flowe can't go in and share reps with Sewell? Is it because they? I know they play different positions, but
right.
I'm wondering. I'm just spitballing here. Like, is it a case in which Flowe can't runs the responsibilities that come with Sewell's spot, or is Sewell just by and far the best linebacker of the group and he has to play no matter what? Or could we see this trio rotate? Like, Isaac's played both spots.
That's a good point. That's a fair point. Isaac has played both Mike and Will, and I think you could see that maybe that's more of what it is just a 3-man rotation, and all 3 guys, based upon the opposition, they split reps. And maybe we do see Isaac Slade-Matautia playing more Mike because of that. I also think, like, gosh, Noah Sewell was the Pac-12 freshman defensive player of the year, led the team in tackles as a freshman. He only started, I think, 6 of those games, and the first game was kind of splitting reps. Like, I think that the ceiling there is really, really high too, and the floor is already high because we're already seeing some of it. So, to a scenario where he's not playing a lot would be stunning to me, because I just kind of think he's like one of your stars on defense going forward. But maybe that's how good Justin Flowe is that not only does he take away snaps from Slade-Matautia, but he takes them from Sewell. And that's kind of an interesting thought, Matt, in terms of rotating. And I wouldn't put it past the staff to do that. And I wouldn't put it past the staff to say, hey, is there a guy on the outside that maybe we think is susceptible to someone like Flowe or Isaac Slade coming over and playing a little too? Like, I think they're going to try to play their best guys. And if it just is they have a logjam at one spot, like, I'm not going to be surprised if they get creative in finding ways to get everybody out there.